short in time for the first issue. Let's move to the second issue. I think this is a lot more relevant to what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about national brands. And what Mr. Faiz says is that we hope our national cars have their own image and design that brings out our own cultural identities. So, interesting, very interesting concept. Something that that we've talked about quite some time before, but perhaps we should start with Dato' Amina.
That's yours. I'm the unlucky one because I'm the only. I just hope that I was hoping that my other brother was here.
Yeah. Do you think there's such a thing as a Malaysian identity when it comes to cars?
Well, it's something that is very difficult to define. I mean, just like you ask our friends or colleagues in engineering or architecture, is there really a Malaysian standard for architecture? Different people have their own views about it. But I guess what is more important is perhaps understanding the uniqueness or the differences of the Malaysian consumers and trying to meet or put those features that meets their requirement. I think that is more important because in Malaysia, our climate is different. For example, the way we design our cars, umbrella kita kadang-kadang kita letak dekat boot. Where it rains, you have problem, you get wet first, just to get the umbrella. So if you can design something, that goes along that way, where to put the umbrella, for example. So, I mean, you're being practical. Look at the environment in Malaysia and other features. For example, all of us use tags, for example. Can we design something that can, that can put where the tags are, rather than now every time you nak ni angkat. I do that also.
But to me, this is a very interesting question. I mean, we hope our national cars have their own image and design that brings out Malaysian cultural identities. So when we talk about, let's say we talk about other brands. I mean, for example, like the Japanese brands. When we see the cars, do we really know that they are from Japan? Or Korean cars, for example. Right now, I think even the European marks are quite scared with the design from Korea. So, I mean, do we really need this? I mean, to me, the intention of having a national car or a national car company is for them to develop a car which can be used by everybody in the whole world. We can't be staying inside Malaysia alone. We need to export cars. Our market is so small.
I agree. What I'm saying is that should it be, how do you define a Malaysian car? I think that's a bit difficult. Yeah. However, you have to take into consideration. I mean, there's no disagreement on what you have just mentioned, and from product point of view, yeah, we are trying to do that. We've got a platform, from our partner, but the rest of the car are designed to meet the requirements of the consumers here first, as well as seeing where are the other markets that have similar tastes or characteristics of the requirements.
Also the important question is to look at current trends, for example. Let's look at the Chevrolet Optra. It's an American brand. It sounds French, right? It's designed by the Koreans. Do you think that the world has to move towards, or car manufacturers should move towards having a global brand, or rather than a local identity?
Really, my opinion here is there are a few aspects that we need to look into. Firstly, from the aspect of where the cars are being sold. I do agree with Dr. Amina that we need to consider the situation, the environment where these cars are being used. There have been many of times in the last years ago, whereby cars have not been validated according to the environment where the car is being driven, ending that the cars fell on the road, okay? But now, of course, there is much less of that because there are technologies that come into play, especially by using simulation, digital engineering, etc., and so on. That's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is really now, in the era of globalization, it is my opinion that while a car can have its own DNA, but that DNA is not really to say that it is a Malaysian DNA or a Japanese DNA, but it's rather a DNA typical for that particular brand. And when it goes in other countries, as well as in that country of origin, so people recognize that car having that DNA. So that is, in my opinion, the image, the design of a make. Now, apart from that one, the other aspect that we need to look at is, of course, coming from wanting to develop the industry, not only about image, design, but really having that capability of doing the design in Malaysia, in Malaysia, to develop that industrial development right from manufacturing, from design to engineering to testing to homologation to production. Now on that score, I just like to add one last point. While we do recognize that Proton, our first national car, well, the title is national, so our first national car has the capability to do a complete manufacturing facility from design to production. Actually, there is also Perodua. Well, I'm pretty sure that Amina wouldn't say this because he's from Perodua, but me coming from a non-Perodua guy, I'm telling you, all of you, that having seen what Perodua has done for the last few years, I would say Perodua similarly has the capability to manufacture cars right from manufacturing, right from design to production, and they are doing just that. The only difference is they are sharing platform, and that is a common practice now among global OEMs to be more competitive. You share platform, but others, you do your own design according to the place, the region where you want to sell your cars.
I would just want to add, as far as national cars, this is just a very light remark. I, for one, was very proud of the fact that when I saw Proton in London, we went round chasing after the cars because there's not many, but the pride of having a Malaysian car in a foreign country. But what has not happened in Malaysia is, unlike the Koreans, where they inculcate amongst the Korean citizens itself, that there is a pride for you to use your own national car. If you use your own national car, the neighbors will look at you very kindly. But if you use a foreign car, then what it means is they even throw eggs at you when you're driving the car, on the road. That has not happened in Malaysia, but there is, I think, as far as the national cars, there were a lot of benefits. When it was first introduced, I think for many of us in the car industry, when we asked for comments and all that, we said, it's not safe, are you sure you want to buy a car? The journalists wrote about it. But over time, you find that the national cars itself is as good as another brand that is available in Malaysia. And that has developed and is accepted by everyone here.
Yeah, maybe a comment from an international manufacturer who tries to pride itself to really produce international cars that are made for the world markets. We are also facing the same difficulty, frankly speaking, because we just moved into one of the largest markets, which is China, and we are finding out that there is a different demand there which we cannot fulfill with our existing vehicles, for instance. So we're going into XL versions, long stretched versions that are obviously preferred by the Chinese customers in mainland China. Now, why do we do that? And I think that's the question that has to be answered first. If you want to be profitable with your local company, you have to build the car for the maximum amount of customers out there. It's very simple. So you need to gather, and I think I heard that before, somebody mentioned that, you need to find out who other customers could that be around the world, and then you have to start to export. Your country is too small to sustain your own car in this country. And I think that should be the driving point. And from then onward, you need to define which are those customers that would also be interested in your vehicle. And whether that's in the UK or whether it's anywhere else, this is the basis of everything that we're doing. And I think no country in the world can afford to keep like either a personal airline or a personal car if it's not also sold long-term in other countries as well. But I think there's a lot of benefits of that, and there's a lot of potential also for your local car industry around the world if you do it right.
Right, I think that's the conclusion we needed.